Hello and welcome to episode 123 of Glitch Report. My name is GnittWitt. Thank you so much for stopping by, saying hi, kicking it with me today on the stream of dreams, the show of shows, and everything in between. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree. That is linktree.com/GnittWitt, where you can find links to my Blue Sky, my Instagram threads, my regular old Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, you name it, I am there. With the exception being of Twitter. But, you know, what are you going to do? You expect me to be on Twitter in 2024? I don't think so. Let me rephrase that. Do you expect me to be on Twitter? Because I was on Twitter for a large part of 2024. Do you expect me to be on Twitter in December of 2024? I don't think so. But what I do think is video games. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. A huge amount of news to get through. You know, again, I've said it before. I think I said this last week. We're not into, with the exception of some closures and cancellations, we're not in this world of like super crazy bombastic news stories because it just typically doesn't happen in December unless something tragic happens. And we'll get to some form of tragedy in a moment. But we got some news. I've also been playing a lot of games. I feel like I just haven't been able to come back and talk about the games that I've been playing because I've been too busy trying to build a Plex server or too busy watching Twin Peaks. And both of those things continue to be true. I finished up the Twin Peaks movie Fire Walk With Me. That is the prequel movie. Takes place before season 1. That's a hell of a movie. That movie is raw and brutal in a way that even something like Blue Velvet, you know, the other David Lynch, I've seen 2 David Lynch movies, Blue Velvet and Fire Walk With Me, Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. And man, let me tell you, some bad shit happens in Fire Walk With Me. And that's saying something considering a lot of bad shit happens in Blue Velvet. But the point is that I've come back with tales of video games that I have played. And some of these games are games that you're going to hear me talk about more throughout the regular podcast. Maybe even games you hear me talk about during Game of the Year. And this also might be where we say goodbye to some of the games that I have been playing. But I don't want to talk about the games that I've been playing just yet. I want to talk about the games that I have played, as in Xbox. Just moments before we started the podcast, Xbox put out its year in review 2024. The personalized statistics of people that have been playing games on Xbox or PC. So let's dive in. If I can do this in a way that works. I don't know if this is gonna work. Okay, but you don't see me in the thing. This is live video, folks. Okay, that's not ideal. None of this is ideal. I should have looked at this. For those trying to watch the video version of the podcast, you'll see a screen that has the details of what I'm looking at. And then I am not in this for one reason or another. Let's see if we can just quickly edit. Whoops. Let's see if we can quickly edit this shit on the fly. I don't think it's going to work, but let's try it. Let's try it. Hold on. Paste. Yep. Nope. Hold on. I got this. Shrink me down. Okay, that works. I suppose as good as it's going to get. All right, that's about as good as it's going to get. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at my year in review. According to Xbox, I played 464 hours of video games, with 64 games total. I earned 221 achievements, and I earned a gamer score of 4,835. That's plus 4,835. Now remember, with the achievements, unlike something like trophies, there is no bronze, silver, gold, platinum. It's that each achievement has its own value. So it could be a 20-point achievement, it could be a 100-point achievement, whatever. Most games equate to about 1,000 achievement points total. So we have 464 hours played. Now, I'm assuming that this isn't entirely accurate. I probably left my PC on running some games. Though I tried to be better about that this year than last year because I was just like 300 hours of Starfield. That can't be right. Though I did play a fair bit of Starfield last year. 464 hours, 64 games, 221 achievements, 4,835 achievement points. My busiest month, according to Xbox, was October, which makes a lot of sense because my number one game for 2024, according to Xbox, is Call of Duty. Now, before we dive into anything else, I just want to clarify one thing. Recent Call of Duty games are not structured and presented the same way that other Call of Duty games are. What I mean by that is if you own Black Ops 6 or Modern Warfare 3, or I believe even Modern Warfare 2, the last 3 Call of Duty games, they are packaged and bundled in the same application, meaning that when you play last year's Modern Warfare 3, you are launching Modern Warfare 3 from a game on your console or PC, PS5 or Xbox, called Call of Duty. So you launch the Call of Duty application, and then you pick Black Ops 6 or Modern Warfare. And I want to stress that because I played a lot of Call of Duty this year, but it doesn't actually specify which Call of Duty I played because I played Modern Warfare 3. I played through the campaign of Modern Warfare 3 earlier this year. I also played a bunch of the multiplayer for Modern Warfare 3 this year. I also played a lot of Black Ops 6, the campaign, the zombies, and the multiplayer. So unfortunately, I can't actually sit here and tell you which Call of Duty I played more of. I suspect it's probably Black Ops 6. But unfortunately, with the way that they track Call of Duty and the way that they present Call of Duty on modern platforms and consoles these days, going back to the last 3 years of Call of Duty, at least, it is just called Call of Duty, which is, what are you going to do? According to Xbox, I am in the top 10% of players for time played. So I play a lot of video games. I am in the top 3% of players for gamer score. So gamer score is your total number of achievement points collected. And I am in the top 3% of players for achievements earned. I am currently sitting at 28,584 gamer score points. I would like to get 100,000 at least, but we will see. Now, if we look at top games, it says that I played about 144 hours of Call of Duty. And I'm in the top 15% of this game's most active players. Now, again, it doesn't specify. It shows a picture of Call of Duty Black Ops 6, but it doesn't specify which game I am referring to. Number 2, most played game, to probably no surprise, is Forza Horizon 5. I ended up putting in about 57 hours of Forza Horizon 5 this year. And then a game that I spent a lot of time on this year, I absolutely loved it. And it was a great reminder of just how awesome the game streaming stuff is. I put 46 hours into Skate 3, which is an Xbox 360 game that you can play on Game Pass Ultimate as part of Xbox's game streaming. So you can't load it natively on a PC, but if you have a phone or we talked about this is an Xbox campaign and this is not an Xbox campaign, but if you have Game Pass Ultimate and you have a Samsung TV, you can play or an iPhone or iPad or whatever. You can play a lot of older games on there through their streaming service. And I had Ultimate for some time for sure. But now you could play older games, and the older game that I decided to play was Skate 3. So of all the things that came out this year and all this crazy stuff, I played a lot of Xbox games, and we'll maybe run down maybe a top 10, like, David Letterman style in just a moment. But Call of Duty, number 1, Forza Horizon 5, number 2, and number 3, Skate 3. Number 4 was Forza Motorsport, that they don't necessarily get into how much time. Number 5 was Palworld. Power World is a great game. Power World's a great game. That's a game that's still in early access. Very curious to see how that game shapes up. Like a lot of people, I spent a lot of time playing Fallout this year. Fallout 6, one of my Fallout 76 is number 6 in my top 10 played games of 2024 on Xbox. Number 7, Yakuza Kiwami. Number 8, Metaphor. Number 9, Starfield. And number 10, Spyro Reignited Trilogy. Wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. What? Okay, I'm looking at the website and it says Call of Duty 116 hours. Oh, this is for Game Pass. Oh, okay. How is that? That doesn't make any sense. All these games are on Game Pass. It's trying to tell me that, like, of the games I played on Game Pass, I put 116 hours into Call of Duty, which doesn't make any sense because it also says that my top played game of this year was Call of Duty with 144 hours. And both of those Call of Duties that I played were on Game Pass, so I'm a little confused. This seems like a slightly worse, messier year in review than last year. But hey, what are you going to do? Let's switch back over to the main camera now. Oh, you can see my notes of what I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But speaking of Call of Duty, let's talk about the Call of Duty killer known as XDefiant. XDefiant to the end, and the end is coming sooner than you might think. Following months of speculation, Ubisoft is closing its competitive free-to-play shooter, XDefiant. I have talked about Ubisoft. I've talked about XDefiant. I feel like I'm one of the few people that was talking about XDefiant for some time. I've played that game for years. I've played XDefiant for years and years. I probably played XDefiant for like at least 2 or 3 years off and on with its, closed beta, pre-alpha, whatever, testing phase and all that stuff. And it has now been confirmed that it's ending support for its shooter. It is also shutting down its game developer studio in San Francisco and Osaka. It is also downsizing its game developer office in Sydney, Australia. Now, this is following months of denials that the shooter was in trouble, right? Like, this is following months and months of, allegations that, like, hey, they're not happy with the game. It's shutting down. It's doing this. It's doing that. But they now confirmed on Tuesday that it has made the difficult decision to discontinue development on XDefiant. Quote, despite an encouraging start, the team's passionate work, and a committed fan base, we've not been able to attract and retain enough players in the long run to compete at the level we aim for in the very demanding free-to-play first-person shooter market. That was the chief studio officer, Marie-Sophie de Weber. Probably nailed that name. Fucking killed it with that name. Quote, as a result, the game is too far away from reaching the results required to enable further significant investment, and we are announcing that we will be sunsetting it. From today, new downloads, player registrations, and purchases will no longer be available for XDefiant. The game's Season 3 will still launch, and servers will remain active until June 3rd, 2025. Almost half of XDefiant's team worldwide will transition to other roles within Ubisoft, but San Francisco and Osaka production studios will close, and its Sydney production site will ramp down, with 143 people departing in San Francisco and 134 people likely to depart in Osaka and Sydney combined. Now, for context, XDefiant was released in May for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. The game's first season of live content launched in July, and its second arrived in September when plans for 2 further seasons of content were outlined. On the same day that XDefiant's second season was launched, Ubisoft announced that it was delaying Assassin's Creed Shadows to next year, and said it had initiated a plan to improve Star Wars Outlaws' fortunes following a disappointing launch. Now, remember that the French publisher has lost more than half of its market share this year, and it recently claimed that its founders are considering taking the company private with Tencent, which already owns about 10% of the company. And then the final thing I'll say is that the statement that they put out on Tuesday also stated that developing games as a live service experience remains a pillar of our strategy, and we've achieved significant success, like Rainbow Six, The Crew, and For Honor, among others. It's a highly competitive market, and we will apply the lessons learned with XDefiant to our future live titles. Globally, we are determined to take the necessary steps to put the company back on a path to growth, innovation, and creativity, and make sure we can set you up for success. This means continuing to radically evolve our mindset for production and business practices, which we will share more about soon, and doing targeted restructuring when necessary. I know that the situation brings questions and expectations. We will share regular and transparent updates. I wonder what Mark Rubin had to say. Mark Rubin was out there. No, is it Mark Rubin? Yeah, Mark Rubin, Ubisoft. What did Mark Rubin have to say about this? Because I know he was out there talking a lot about XDefiant. I wish I could find his tweet. I'm gonna type in tweet. I'm gonna type in Mark Rubin tweet. And if it'll let me, yeah, I can't, because I'm not on Twitter. I can't easily find Mark Rubin's tweets, which might just be for the best. I don't know, but anyways, Defiant to the end. That XDefiant, and that end is coming up soon. We've talked about ex-PlayStation boss Sean Layden before. Sean Layden is out there talking that shit as he tends to do, especially now that he is no longer with PlayStation. Continues to talk about the state of the industry, the viability of developing under these current circumstances and situations where budgets have ballooned, games are too big, it's all a bubble that's about to burst. He says that development costs are simply not sustainable. This is an interview that happened with Eurogamer. I'm getting this kind of repackaged courtesy of Video Games Chronicles. As always, shout out to Video Games Chronicles. He kind of goes on to say, he's kind of talking about acknowledge that the industry is currently about getting more money off the same people. This idea that they're trying to find more ways to charge money to the same group of people. So this idea that like, hey, it's really hard to do business and do capitalism when we are selling to the same people over and over again. He says that every generation it costs twice as much to build a game. During the PS4 generation, which was the last I was associated with, game dev was $150 million if you want to be top of the line. And that's before marketing. So by that math, PS5 games should eventually reach $300 to $400 million. And that is just outright not sustainable, which I think, they were talking about development costs for something like Spider-Man 2. And Spider-Man 2 is a great example of a game that cost a fuck load of money. That's a technical term, fuck load. It's somewhere just past a boatload of money, if you're doing the math. Sean Layden added, it's like we're at the end of the 18th century and we're realizing that building cathedrals is really expensive. Can we continue to build these massive edifices to God for this incredible amount of labor and time? Or should we just build 4 walls and a roof and that's a church, right? Man, what an amazing analogy that Sean Layden came up with. The idea that like AAA gaming is basically a cathedral business, which I think, like, here's the thing. Cathedrals are fucking cool. You ever seen one like in real life? I haven't, but the ones I've seen in pictures are like, man, that thing is crazy. Right. And like, listen, there are really cool churches, if you know, and other architecture analogies we can come up with. But like, yeah, the difference between a cathedral and a church, night and day. He goes on to say, I'm afraid we've built AAA gaming into a kind of cathedral business and it just can't grow any further. In fact, it's probably grown too far already. He was then asked how this trend could be rolled back into something more sustainable, and Layden simply replied that games are too long, suggesting that while the length of a game used to be one of its main selling points, as average audience has aged, a long game has become less of an attractive prospect to some players. It's this idea that, like, you know, people that were, 10, 20 years 20 years old, when the Nintendo came out, or this stuff, simply do not have the same time that they once had to play video games. In fact, he kind of talks about like your time rich and your money poor. Let's continue on. For the longest time, we kept banging on about 100 hours of gameplay. This is going to be awesome. It's 100 hours of gameplay. Like, that's the most important thing to know. That was the metric in the early years when the average gamer was 18 to 23. And when you're 18 to 23, you're time rich and money poor. But as the average age of the gamer moved into the late 20s and early 30s, well, it's the opposite, right? Maybe you aren't money rich, but you're definitely time poor. So I think our approach is a mismatch to that market to reality. Layden also suggested that the constant chase for intricate levels of detail ramp up production costs, and that if games are too long and players don't reach the end, that results in a lot of resources spent on content few actually get to see. Well, which is 100%. He does name drop a director in a moment that I think is a great point too. On PS1, our expectations walking down the street in a game was that you couldn't open every door. Now the expectation is you can go in every house, open every drawer, and everything is destructible. And that's nice, but it's expensive to make that happen. We have to look at that. If only listen to this. If only 50% of players see the end of your game, what about all those millions you spend on the final level for only half the people to see it? There's so much money being put into making huge game experiences and people aren't seeing it. What would Coppola do if you walked out halfway through his movie? We have to understand if this is a good use of resources. I want a movement that gets more people to finish games, where we make it so compelling they just want to see it, and where it's not so onerous. I've never pronounced that word before. Anyways, they so onerous that they don't have to spend 3 months doing it. So I am of two minds. On one hand, I do like the idea of a game being so open that I could spend 100 hours, 200 hours playing it. But on the other hand, I would like a game that was lean and told a punchy story and provided a tight experience that you could finish it in a much more reasonable time. I got a family member who is getting into the Call of Duty games, getting into the Call of Duty story modes. And, kind of the thing that I kind of, because Black Ops is coming out and all this stuff. And I was like talking about like, oh yeah, like those games have like incredible tight stories. We'll get to the problems with the Call of Duty stories in a moment, but like they are incredibly tight, punchy stories. They do not overstay their welcome. And, you should not need to spend that long playing it, right? If you're a seasoned Call of Duty player, you're probably looking at maybe 6-7 hours ish, maybe less, maybe more. And if you're new to first person shooters, it'll probably take you a little bit longer. But we're not talking some 30-hour thing, right? This is not a 30-hour thing, which is funny because Sean Layden is talking about 100-hour things. So this family members getting into it, playing them, and he's just like, wow, like they really open with a bang. They do not, those Call of Duty stories do not fuck around. They there's not a lot of fat on a Call of Duty campaign, right? And then you could argue that they've been made in this factory in such a way that like they kind of can't because of the way they make the game. But the other problem with Call of Duty is that so many people, the Call of Duty stories, is that so many people buy Call of Duty exclusively for the multiplayer mode, exclusively for the zombies mode, or they're big Warzone fans and they're just playing the free-to-play version of the Battle Royale. There are a lot of people, and I would argue at least half the people who buy Call of Duty never touch the campaign. That's my guess. So we have a scenario where there's an entire mode of a game that half the people don't play, while Sean Layden, is arguing that half the people don't see the end of the game, which I'm going to tell you right now, Sean Layden, 50% of people getting to the end of a video game is much higher than the reality of the situation. My understanding is that we're talking about a third of people who play games, story-based video games, get to the end of those games. I would have to pull up like some sort of like achievement list or some sort of statistics. Maybe I'll try to pull that up for next week's show or something. But yeah, less than 50% of people make it to the end of the video games. But also, Sean Layden is not wrong. Like, Sean Layden is not wrong. Like, the cost to produce Spider-Man is fucking outrageous. The money that they spent on Spider-Man is absolute Looney Tunes as far as I'm concerned. So there is this need to correct the industry, and he's bringing up good points. I just don't see this industry interested in doing that at the moment. I don't think things have gotten bad enough in the AAA gaming space. I don't think things have gotten desperate enough with these big AAA companies to consider those changes, but they're probably coming. Just don't know when. Let's talk Riot Games. Right now, I don't talk about Riot Games because I don't play Valorant. I don't play League of Legends. I really do not give a shit about the output of Riot Games. However, what they're doing, what they're talking about, I think is interesting. I think it is potentially valid, and I think it might be a good idea. So if you are a content creator, if you are a Twitch streamer, a YouTuber, a popular TikToker, whatever, if you are a prominent content creator who is known for creating content based on the games that Riot makes, such as League of Legends or Valorant, Riot will now ban you for infringements, even if they are not committed in the game. So if you are a Riot content creator and you are making content outside of the game, if you are making a TikTok, a YouTube, whatever, and you are a dickhead, if you are going against their terms of service, if you are actively making their community toxic and hostile, Riot may potentially ban you even if you weren't doing it in the context of the games that they control. They will ban you from their games even if you weren't playing their games at the time. Wouldn't you know it? A lot of people were really upset about this news. A lot of people were just like, oh my God, I can't believe the tyrannical Riot and all this stuff. Oh my God, the sky is falling, Chicken Little. But think about how toxic and nasty and gross and vile the internet is. Think about how toxic and nasty and vile the game community is. How awful the fans of video games are on the internet. Right? And that's not even taking into account, oh, the people that play League of Legends are not nearly as bad as the people that play Dota 2, or, oh my God, Call of Duty players are so much more racist than Grand Theft. Like, I'm not even comparing apples to oranges. I'm just talking about on the whole. Motherfuckers that are playing video games are just scummy. Not everybody. But I think if we paint enough of a broad brush, we're going to hit more of our targets than not. Maybe a little bit of friendly fire along the way, but my analogy is sound as far as I'm concerned. So, Riot Games has announced that it will now ban content creators who commit infringements against its terms of service, even if that infringement doesn't occur in-game. From January 3rd, users who commit an offense such as using slurs or offensive language about another player while streaming a Riot game, even if the offending phrase wasn't said in the game itself, they will be banned. This comes as part of Riot's updates to its off-platform conduct standards, which it hopes will further eliminate toxicity associated with its players. They put out a YouTube video. We're not going to watch it. But the example given is a content creator streaming Riot games using an offensive term while a Riot game was in the background of the stream, even if the term was said to another player via the in-game chat. Quote, if you say or do things that break our terms of service while broadcasting or creating content about our games, we can restrict your access to your Riot account and suspend your partner privileges if you're part of the partner program. Basically, if you are a good enough content creator that Riot will pay you some amount of money to make content for them, and then you are a dickhead, even outside of the context of the games that Riot makes, you could still get banned. They did state that we are not going to proactively monitor everything that happens across social media. It is now within our rights to issue penalties in-game when that content is brought to our attention, to which I'm going to say it's a golf clap, but I'm going to clap nonetheless for Riot. I think this is a great idea. I think people got to watch their mouth. I think people got to quit acting a fool on social media, especially if they are representing Riot games in some way, shape, or form. I just think that, like, you know, people talk about, oh, free speech, you're branding my free speech, but like, free speech, and this is going to get into a fucking wormhole, but free speech was never about a lack of consequence for your actions, right? If you want to talk a whole bunch of shit about the people that play League of Legends, the person you played the game against, if you want to say slurs or whatever, you can absolutely say that. Like, you can absolutely say that. No one is stopping you from doing so, with the exception of platforms that do not actually operate within free speech. Riot video games are not a beacon for free speech. TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch are not beacons of free speech. And I will even say that Twitter is not a beacon of free speech, despite what Elon Musk has to say. So, if they say jump, you say how high. But they're not even asking you to do that. They're asking you to tone the racism down. So if that's so hard for you that you get, all tied in knots, I don't know what to tell you other than that if you are mad that Riot Games wants you to be less racist and less sexist on the internet, your existence probably makes the world of video games worse. And do with that how you will, but I will applaud Riot Games for a small step in the right direction. Let's talk Pal World. A very small update it's a small update on a big Pal World update. Pal World is getting a major update in December, sometime in December. They didn't say when. That is going to add a new island to the game, a new landmass to the game that is 6 times larger than the last landmass known as Sakurajima, which is just a reminder that I need to go back to Pal World. But basically, they're adding a new island. It's going to be 6 times larger than the last island that was added to the game. Now, I don't know how big the last island was that was added to the game, but when they say it's big, I say fucking A, let's do it. Really enjoy. And anyways, I'm just bringing this news story up because it's a great reminder that I really enjoyed my time with Pal World, and I should get back to that game. Real quick news story. So got a couple quick news stories, and we're going to dive into some bigger ones in a moment. But Visions of Mana, the director of Visions of Mana, who worked at NetEase's Oka Studios, developed the Square Enix published game Visions of Mana. So the director of the Visions of Mana game that was at NetEase has now left NetEase to work at Square Enix proper. That is Ryosuke Yoshida, who posted a message on Twitter announcing the news. I'm On a personal note, I quit NetEase Oka Studios on October 31st. We were a new studio and we were able to release Visions of Mana. I'm grateful to the development team and NetEase for their support. It was a very good experience. I am happy to announce that I joined Square Enix in December. I will do my best to make a game that many people can enjoy. Should maybe give that Visions of Mana game a shot. I know there's a demo for it, but yeah, I don't know. Devolver, one of the biggest indie publishers in the game today, Devolver, has announced some delays to a couple of games. They are delaying Baby Steps, Stick It to the Stickman, and Skate Story. Baby Steps, if you remember, is that weird game where you play as a big baby. Skate Story is supposed to be like a alternative style skateboarding game. It seems like an action skateboarding game the way that like Tony Hawk is. But they announced that they have delayed them, which is now coming out in, all three games now coming out sometime in 2025. That is Stick It to the Stickman, Baby Steps, and Skate Story delayed to 2025, which is, I think, fair because I don't even think those games had tight release schedules at release dates announced at the time. Speaking of release dates, The Thing Remastered has secured itself a release date. And that release date seems to be coming up pretty damn soon. Now, if you don't know what The Thing Remastered is, The Thing is a movie made by John Carpenter. They also made a 2011 sequel. Was it a sequel or a prequel? Anyways, they then made a kind of survival horror / squad based shooter for the PlayStation 2 called The Thing, and that is what they are remastering. I don't know where this Thing game takes place in the timeline of things, but The Thing was a PS2 game. It was a squad based horror shooter. And the idea is that your squad mates could become the Thing at any time throughout the game. It was this kind of this dynamic, persistent horror of like, oh, I got this buddy running along with me, and I don't know, he's acting funny, his heart rate spiking, he's doing this, he's doing that. Basically that game has been remastered, and it is coming out soon. That is all they said. That's maybe the problem that I've run into is they said soon, but it is supposed to be in December. So I'll see if I can pull up a better release date than that. We'll go to Steam. Steam might have it. The Thing Remastered. They said December. They said December soon. God damn it. What's the point of announcing that the release date is coming soon if all they said was coming soon? So this is a remaster of the 2002 third-person survival horror shooter. It is meant to serve as a sequel to The Thing, and it is going to feature some upgrades such as anti-aliasing, per pixel lighting, 4K resolution, and up to 144 frames per second. Maybe I'll play it. Maybe I'll get around to it. I never played the original Thing, but hey. John Carpenter games are back in the news. Y'all remember when he announced that Toxic Commando game? When's that game coming out? We have heard nothing about that Toxic Commando game, and it seems like those that Halloween and Evil Dead games really came and went. I don't even know. Did those even come out on Steam? Did that Halloween game actually come out? Halloween, Ash versus Evil Dead. Okay, they did. Where can I buy them? Where like, I'm not trying to be like snarky or anything, but like, where do I go to buy those games? Did they only do physical versions? That can't be right. I'm going to type in Ash versus the Evil Dead PC. Oh, they called it Retro Realms Ash versus the Evil Dead. Okay, well, excuse me. Retro. Oh, well, that's stupid. Why does it come up as Retro Realms Arcade on Steam? Oh, okay. Okay, I see what they did. Retro Realms is the bundle that they made for the game, and you can walk around in first person in a fake arcade from the looks of things. Anyways, they made those. Anyways, those games are out. $34 for Halloween, $34 for Ash vs. the Evil Dead, $68 for both. That seems a little pricey. Anyways, now I know. And now I'm going to forget again. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we got more news, and we're also going to talk about the games that I've been playing. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. I continue to be GnittWitt, and we got one final news story for you. This is a doozy of a news story. Let's try our very best, okay? That's all I can ask, is let's try our very best to be patient and respectful of everyone's interests and beliefs. This is a news story that was published by Kotaku. It was also reported by GameIndustry.biz. So GameIndustry.biz were actually the first to run this story, which is based on a report by Medea Research. So just keep in mind we're dealing with like research paper, science here, okay? People in potentially white lab coats wrote this report. But I'm going to reference the Game Industry .biz and the Kotaku story back to back. The report states that most people who play video games are spending more time watching people play video games than playing them. That's the report. So when they talk about that, they're talking about things like Twitch streamers and YouTube let's plays and video series and stuff like that, and all the kind of contemporary social media that encompasses game content, right? And basically the report suggests that most people that play video games actually spend more time watching people play video games than actually playing them. Now, the report does suggest something that I think is stupid and terrible and bad, which is the report suggests that publishers and developers should port more video content into the games themselves. I don't know if that means more cutscenes or what, but they're suggesting, hey, based on our report, a lot of people like watching. And that's kind of absurd, but let me go back to this GameIndustry.biz story. According to Medea Research, which concluded that gamers typically spend 7.4 hours a week gaming and 8.5 hours a week watching game-related videos. The research, which Medea claims highlights the untapped potential for game publishers to bring video content inside their own ecosystem, also claims that 24% of PC console players and 48% of in-game buyers watch game-related content at least monthly, with the latter considered to be high-spending gamers. They say that this means revenue is left on the table, according to the report's authors, with game publishers ceding significant revenue opportunities, especially advertising, to third-party video platforms, even as the game's market faces growth challenges. Bringing video content inside game ecosystems could also allow publishers to compete in another lane of the attention economy, which the report states means unlocking new revenue streams in the process. They have it all wrong. Like, I'm not trying to like claim to be smarter than anybody else, but people do not play video games for video content. There are plenty of people, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of people who love that there is a 1 hour long cutscene in Metal Gear Solid 4 where you just put your controller down and you just watch. A lot of people that love that stuff. There are a lot of people who don't like significant cutscenes or dialogue options and stuff like that in their games. But the dialogue, options and the cutscenes have, in my opinion, very little to do with why people watch other people play video games. And really what it is, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's simple. The reason that we see a lot of people playing video games and even more time spent watching other people, it's purely a generational thing. It's absolutely, it's a generational thing, right? So think about it like this. If you play sports and you play that sport, I don't know, 3 hours a week, 4 hours a week, and then you watch other people play that sport, what are the odds that you are watching those people play longer than you typically play a week? Hockey. We'll take hockey as an example. Okay, you got a hockey practice once a week, you got a game once a week. That's maybe 4-ish hours, 4 or 5 hours, maybe. You do a 90-minute practice, you do a 3-hour game or 2.5-hour game or something. What are the chances that in the meantime you are catching, 2 or more NHL games a week if you're a hockey fan? What are the chances? All of a sudden, you're spending more time watching people play hockey than you play hockey. But GnittWitt, why would you compare hockey with video games? Because it's the same thing. It is you are actively participating in a game, or you are watching other people play a game vicariously. It is no different. It's absolutely no different. Now, the reason why some people have like alarm bells going off is because it's video games and because they're old people. Like, people look at this and if they get upset about it, it's probably because their kids are about to put them in the old folks home. Like, straight up. Like, you would have to be older than dirt to look at this and think it's upsetting. Because you don't have the foresight to compare it to other hobbies that people participated in that can be both an active participation and a passive participation and potentially give people the same feelings that they get out of actively participating in it. Sports is a great example. It's probably the best example you can come up with. Or, I mean, okay, fine. You play music. How often do you play your instrument versus how much time do you spend listening to music? It's just because video games is such a new medium, such a young form of entertainment that these people think it's such a big deal, right? If you love video games, if you eat, sleep, breathe video games as a hobby, right? Let's forget the part where it's a lifestyle. Let's forget the part where you're a content creator or whatever. It's very possible that you might live a lifestyle where you don't have as much time to play games as you want. So you take the train to work, your commute's an hour one way. Great. If you love watching games, you can easily catch up on 2 hours of gaming. But you work a full-time job, you don't get a chance to play games the way you do. So maybe you end up catching another 45 minutes of game videos, during your break at work. Okay. So now we're up to about 2 hours and 45 minutes of potential game videos in one day, just one day, which is higher than the average for people watching games potentially. But hear me out. And then you get home and you're tired and the wife's like, oh, you gotta, what's for dinner? And the kids are like, wow, whatever kids do. And then what? Maybe you get half an hour to play a game. And even then your like heart's not really in it because you're exhausted from the grind of, being a cog in the machine. Not to get all depressing, but whatever. It's just so believable. In fact, it almost is not surprising that this is the reality of the situation where people on average are watching, an hour or two more of people playing video games than they do actually doing it. Now, you might not give a shit. You might be like, hey man, I got other interests and hobbies. I'm not as into games as I am other forms of entertainment or mediums or art forms, whatever. That's totally fine. We're talking about people that like eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. And that like, hey, I play video games and I don't really care about watching movies, or I play video games and I don't really care about sports, or, I play video games and, and it's something I do with my family or whatever, right? Like there's a lot of people who play a lot of games for a lot of different reasons. But when they say, it turns out most of you are spending more time watching games than playing them, my response is, yeah, duh. 100%. 100%. And then people have the nerve to be like, oh, this generation of kids, they don't have the attention spans or whatever, or young people don't have the attention spans. To which I say, yeah, but they're watching like someone play they're listening to a 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast. Now, in fairness, if you're listening to a 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast or watching somebody play Call of Duty Warzone for 2.5 hours, there is a good chance that you're doing something else at the same time. God, I hope you're doing something else at the same time. Cooking, whatever. But, okay, maybe my argument for how the attention spans of young people work isn't a great one, because if you listen to enough of the Joe Rogan podcast, your brain is probably going to fall out of your asshole. But the point still stands that there's nothing wrong with spending more time watching games than playing them if you are a big fan of video games. Let's move on. We're going to move on because we're going to stop talking about watching people play video games and instead talk about the video games that I have played myself. The Steam sale, the Steam Autumn sale is happening now, and I have fallen, get it, for the Steam Autumn sale traps. I picked up a couple of games during that sale. I'm just going to pull up. Oh, there's a Steam year-end review. Oh, that's for 2023. Okay, that's not up yet. Okay, hold on. I've strayed too far from the path. I've been playing a couple of games. I bought a couple of games on the Steam sale. I was going to talk about those games. Picked up a couple of games during the Steam sale. I picked up Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip, which is what looks to be an open world platforming game from that came out earlier this year. It looks really cute and goofy, and I would like to get a chance to play it. I have not done so yet. I also picked up LA Noire. I'm thinking about my 2025 gaming resolutions, my new year gaming resolutions, and my gaming resolutions are, I'll maybe talk more about it on like next week's show or something. But for gaming resolutions, it's not so much about like a backlog of games, because the thing is, like, the game backlog is always going to be growing. It's never not growing. It's going to always be something that, like, I 1,000% have more video games. Will have access to more video games than I have access to time on this earth. Right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So when I started working on my like new gaming New Year's resolutions, I was like, let's take a small sample of games that I think are important, whether that's because I'm now in a place where I might be able to better enjoy them, or there's a better version of that game out there, or the time is right, whatever the case may be. And I think LA Noire is a game, and so that also means, before I get too ahead of myself, it also means that these are not necessarily games that I haven't finished. It could be games that I'd like to come back to and replay. It could be games that I haven't finished. It might be a game that I would just like to pick up my save and go from there. It might be a game that I'm restarting for the first time. But I think LA Noire is a game that I would like to see through to the end. I think I have a better appreciation now for and I mean, this goes back to like me talking about like David Lynch and Blue Velvet and all this other stuff. But I think I now in my 30s, my early 30s, I think I have a better appreciation for noir than I did back when LA Noire originally came out. I think when that game originally came out, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, detective stuff, old timey detective stuff, you know, golden age of Hollywood. But I think I have a better appreciation for adventure games in general. I will be honest, I'm not a big adventure game guy. And there's a potential that the adventure game gameplay and mechanics of LA Noire have not aged super well. But like, I just think that like what LA Noire was selling is something that I'm much more interested in buying nowadays than when that game originally came out. I think that game was really cool. But I think now is the time. Final Fantasy 9 is a game that I bought on the Steam. So I bought LA Noire, I bought Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. I also bought Final Fantasy 9, and I think Final Fantasy 9 is another game that like, hey man, you spent a lot of time playing, you know, Final Fantasy 7 and you remake and you still have to go back and play, you still have to go back and finish Final Fantasy 16. I also finished Final Fantasy 15. So like, you know, I've been playing some Final Fantasy games, but to me, my true love is Final Fantasy 9. If it's not 9, it's Tactics. Though I do really like 7 as well. Don't get me wrong. But Final Fantasy 9 is another game that I bought on the Steam sale. And I think Final Fantasy 9 is another game that, like, if nothing else, I would like to say I have replayed Final Fantasy 9 in 2025. So I think between that and LA Noire, I am, again, it's not about the backlog. It's not about like looking at this number and being like, oy vey, there's just so many games. It's like, let's pick out a small selection of games. And I will be honest, these are not all of the games that I plan on, you know, returning to or playing for the first time in 2025 as part of some gaming New Year's resolution. But those are 2 games. And then I also picked up 2 first-person shooters, Sulaco, which is a 2024 game that is out in early access. It is unfinished. And then I also bought a game called Echo Point Nova. So those are the games that I've currently bought on the Steam sale. I might buy some more. I might not. We shall see. I was actually really close to buying the Mortal Kombat 11 complete edition. You know, just talking about Mortal Kombat 1 and where that game is at these days. But also the fact that I can get Mortal Kombat 11 for a song, like it is super cheap and you get all of that content, you know, RoboCop and the expansion story and all of this crazy shit. Like there's a lot to like and a lot to be excited about, even as it pertains to Mortal Kombat 11. So I was very tempted, very tempted to get in on Mortal Kombat 11 because it is dirt cheap at the moment. Or it was dirt cheap at the moment. Is it no longer on sale? Cool, it's no longer on sale. Well, that's fun. How can that be? The Steam sale isn't over, is it? Oh, it is over. Well, okay. Well, that makes a lot more sense all of a sudden. I was like, wait a minute, what the fuck's going on? That's why the Steam sale is over. Well, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I'm GnittWitt, and I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Well, I'm sure there's still deals out there. You just keep on looking. What's the big deal on the Steam sale now? You can get Spider-Man Remastered for 50% off. $40 still seems a little steep as far as I'm concerned. But well then. Guess I won't be buying any more games for the time being. So let's talk about the games that I have been playing. I have decided that I'm going to drop Dragon Age the Veilguard. Dragon Age the Veilguard, the 4th Dragon Age game, a follow-up to Dragon Age Inquisition. And Dragon Age the Veilguard is a game that I really wanted to like. And the reason why I wanted to like it is because there are so many things that game does right. I think it's got a fantastic character creator. Really enjoyed making my Rook, you know, adjusting the eye color and the hair and all of that. I really enjoyed it. I think that combat is a lot of fun. That real time, button mashing combat, I think is a lot of fun. I think it's a gorgeous looking game. I think it's a fabulous looking game, and it runs incredibly well on PC. And I'll say that I think a lot of those characters in that game are fun. Your main companions are fun in that game. But man, that main story, that main plot line, I hit about almost 20 hours ish in Dragon Age of Veilguard. And after about 20 hours, I had to seriously think and stop and think, like, is this doing anything for me? Do I care? The premise being that in Dragon Age of Veilguard, you have tried to stop someone from taking over the world, but as a result, you have unleashed these like elven gods that are going to destroy the world. It's basically the scenario of like, you tried to prevent somebody from doing something bad, and as a result, you made things worse. So, the clock starts ticking on the end of this world scenario that you find yourself in. And this idea that you're going to have to unite, different people from different disciplines. Oh, I have to get a Grey Warden who is like this soldier guy. I have to get a good wizard. I have to get an expert in elven architecture and technology. And you have to get these groups of people, something like an Ocean's 11, a squad, of people to help pull off this job of saving the world. Unfortunately, like the moment to moment gameplay, the individual levels and missions just don't bring about this sense of dread or this sense of danger that would lead you to believe the world is ending. Like, I understand that they want to have quiet moments and you're going to interact with your character, the non-playable characters. You're going to talk to your companions. You're going to hang out. You're going to drink coffee in Treviso with this assassins guy who helps secretly run the entire city because the city doesn't have a proper government. So instead, the assassins run the city and they're actually decent people, but maybe there's corruption inside. Who knows? Like, it just doesn't quite land for me, unfortunately. And I think in a game that is, proposing to be a 50, 70, 80 hour game, I need that story to go somewhere. And unfortunately, what little highs there were from the story perspective usually came from individual character moments and not from the bigger plot. If you remember from earlier this year, I was kind of complaining about Final Fantasy 16, excuse me. But the problem with Final Fantasy 16 is it like goes crazy. Like the story just ramps up and shit goes crazy and you reveal people and you're like, surprise, guess who was behind this the entire time? And all this crazy stuff starts happening. And then it nosedives into what feels like a very slow and plotting side quest that is not going anywhere. But then it ramps back up and you're back on that roller coaster, right? So like in the case of Final Fantasy 16, and not to compare, they're kind of different games, but Final Fantasy 16 at least has some very high highs that kept me engaged in that story until I fell off of it because other games started coming out. Compared to Dragon Age, where the highs are pretty low from a main plot perspective, and it's just kind of flat. It's just a flat story. I don't know how else to describe it. It just doesn't seem to go anywhere in a way that I find particularly engaging, it's a damn shame because, man, I would just love to get more into Dragon Age of Veilguard. I think it's a great game. Unfortunately, that story does nothing for me, and in fact, has unfortunately ultimately pushed me away from the game. So that'll probably be the last time I talk about Dragon Age of Veilguard, unless I pick it up for I got it as part of the EA monthly membership thing. So unless that game is like $10-20 later, 6 months from now or something, I just can't imagine myself going back to it. In fact, I would rather go back. Not this is necessarily one of those gaming's New Year resolutions, but I would rather go back and play Mass Effect, even though I've already played Mass Effect, and that I would have to commit to 3 games of Mass Effect if I wanted to see all of my story choices and character moments and stuff, make it to the end. I would much rather play something like Mass Effect, because I think the world of Mass Effect is much more interesting. I'm much more of a sci-fi guy than I am a fantasy guy. But more than that, the main plot of Mass Effect actually goes somewhere, and the side quests, the individual character moments are a lot of fun too. So for now, we're gonna drop Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Though maybe I should get back to Dragon Age Inquisition. People really liked Inquisition. Maybe I should just go play that instead. I played a game in early access. It's a free-to-play game in early access called Brighter Shores. It is the follow-up from some of the people that made RuneScape. If I don't talk a lot about RuneScape, but RuneScape is a top 5 favorite video game of all time, in my opinion. There is no game on earth that I have spent more time playing than RuneScape. And when I say, that there's no other game, I'm talking about, almost like 2,000 hours across my entire life has been spent playing RuneScape. I fucking love RuneScape. For context, RuneScape is a free-to-play online RPG, and it is a very open game in terms of like there are quests, there are stories, you can do that stuff, but a lot of it is really down to skills, and a lot of the skills that you can engage with and level up in RuneScape are not even necessarily combat skills. Like if you just want to spend a bunch of time fishing in RuneScape, or cutting trees, or fire making, which are 2 separate skills, or cooking, or mining, or maybe you want to be really good at archery, or maybe you want to be really good at magic. Like there's so many skills in RuneScape, and as a result, it is a very chill game. You can run around, you'll see other people. It's a huge open world. But it's just one of those things where like, I'm just going to listen to a podcast and I'm just going to, cut down some trees because I'm trying to get to level 70 in my tree making. And once I get to level 70, I'll be able to chop down better trees and that are worth more money if I wanted to sell them, or I can convert those trees into, making arrows and all of this stuff. Like it's one of those types of games, but I've just loved RuneScape for the longest time. So when I heard that, some of the people that had made RuneScape were going to make this game called Brighter Shores, my ears perked up and I said, okay, I want to see what a modern take on the skill-based, and when I say skill-based, I'm talking about like, leveling up, different skills, whether they're combat focused or non-combat focused skills. I want to see what a modern take on that is, because in the case of RuneScape, while they have modernized it a lot, and they've actually split it off into being a classic version, like if you want to play old school RuneScape or modern RuneScape, you can do so. I'm more of a modern RuneScape guy. This felt like a team starting from scratch. So what Brighter Shores is, it is a kind of top down isometric-ish 3D online RPG, similar to something like RuneScape. From the look and everything it is, and even from some of the writing as well, it is very RuneScape-esque. The difference being that it is a much slower game. From everything I can say so far, it is a much, much slower game. And it's unfinished. It's in early access. And I don't necessarily love the writing. So when you can interact with characters, there'll be times when you have a joke response that you can give them. And you'll be talking to someone, you'll give like some smart ass remark or something. But when you talk to a character in that game and you give the smart ass remark, you get the response from that character, and then the conversation just ends and you have to go back and talk to them again to actually start the conversation for real. So it's almost like this weird, like stop and go, from a writing perspective, in terms of like, oh, I said something funny and then they said, oh, fuck off. And then I have to go talk to them again and then say the non-smart ass answer to actually, complete the quest or get the story mission that I'm trying to do. I wish it was a little more fluid in terms of like, oh, they still gave me what I needed to progress in the game, but I got to be, sarcastic or grumpy or whatever. But that start and stop seems to really persist throughout the game, because when you are leveling up your skills in Brighter Shores, when you access another part of the game, your skills reset. Like if you spent a bunch of time leveling up as a fighter and then you progressed further in the game, you might enter episode 2 of the game and then you are back to being a level 1 fighter. But if you go back to episode 1, you're back to whatever level you were as a fighter. And I got to be honest, when I play these types of role-playing games, when I play these types of online games, I am there for the power fantasy. If I'm going to spend 200 hours fighting monsters and leveling up to become more powerful, I would like to see that power represented in almost every type of combat that I do in the game. I'm not saying that I want everything to be easy, but if I spent time becoming a badass, I would at least like to feel like I'm a badass in a lot of different areas of the game. So between like dialogue that doesn't seem like it goes anywhere and this herky-jerky like player progression system, Brighter Shores just seems rough around the edges in a way that I can't tell if this is their intended design or if they're going to course correct and make something that feels like a more persistent progression system, because as of right now, it just, there's not a lot of reasons to play it. It just feels like monotonous, meaningless grind, which is funny because while I was more than happy to do monotonous, meaningless grinding in RuneScape, it felt like there was a purpose to it in a way that, unfortunately, I just don't see in Brighter Shores. We'll move on to talking about Echo Point Nova. Echo Point Nova is a first-person shooter. It's an open-world first-person shooter. And when I first saw this game, I was like, holy shit, I need to play this game. I have to play this game. This game looks fucking rad. And the trick with Echo Point Nova is not only that it's open world, but also that it is it's a game that it's a first-person shooter that has a huge focus on mobility and speed. So when we talk about mobility, you have what's basically a hoverboard that you can access at any time. And that hoverboard allows you to do a lot of things like jump and glide and through the air. And you can even use a hoverboard while shooting. So you can like jump crazy high in the air and then aim and shoot however you want. But it also allows you to climb. So the open world is very much presented as like a sky island sort of scenario where you are hopping from large landmass to large landmass as they float through the air. That also means that if you catch on to a landmass, you can actually aim your hoverboard up and basically ride that landmass up into the air until you're on top of the flat ground. It also has a slow motion system. So if you feel like you're going too fast at any time, you can always hit slow motion to better aim and stuff like that. And it's really hard to describe because it is just so wicked fast and the mobility is just so freeing. But it is a game where basically you can move at 100 miles an hour, running around, diving, jumping, gliding through the air, and shooting all at the same time. And the way that the open world is presented is you're kind of going to these different islands at your own pace. And when you get there, it'll be like, oh, this is an area that's kind of shaped like a desert, canyon sort of thing. And you'll go there. There'll be a mission. And that mission is usually like some sort of combat challenge of like, kill all the enemies in the area. So when you activate that mission, then the enemies spawn in. And then it basically becomes this like combat arena that you're going to fight in. As you're fighting, you are finding new weapons and stuff in the environment. The weapons are usually based on some sort of category. So you have pistols, you have a pistol, you have a shotgun, you have a submachine gun, you have a grenade launcher, you have a submachine gun, and so on. So as you are killing enemies, those guns are leveling up and getting more perks. So I started out with like a revolver, and after killing enough enemies, my revolver magically got like a red dot sight on it. And, I shot enough, enemies with my submachine gun that I got a silencer on that machine gun, which provided better accuracy and all that stuff. You will eventually find more weapons than you have categories for. So then you have to decide, oh, I want to get I want to use the semi-automatic pistol instead of the revolver, so on and so forth. You're also earning perks and bonuses. So I attached a perk to my character after playing enough of the game where my pistols reloaded 33% faster, and whatnot. I ended up putting just under 90 minutes into the game. I'm, maybe an hour and a half in to the game, and the sense of speed is wonderful. The gliding, the mobility, the movement is just, it's just unlike a lot of first person shooter games that I play. You think about even something like Call of Duty Black Ops 6, where it's like, okay, I can run forwards and backwards and side to side, and I can jump, I can dive, I can do all this stuff. But like Echo Point Nova is a million times faster of a game than something like Black Ops 6 or Titanfall for that matter. Titanfall is another great, comparison, because you can always, use your hoverboard to ride along the walls or the ceiling while shooting in the different direction and all this crazy stuff. Unfortunately, I find that the presentation of Echo Point Nova leaves a lot to be desired. There is little to no story, which I would be okay with if the open world nature didn't just get so tiring so quickly. The other problem I have with Echo Point Nova is I don't necessarily love the enemy design, the graphical design overall in the game, and I don't love the sound design. The guns feel so wimpy and lifeless and bland, like the submachine gun just makes a piddly like sound. Like it's just not, even when you don't have the silencer on, it doesn't feel like a very hard hitting weapon. And I also don't love the graphical design of it. I think it's got a good look. It also does a pretty good job of like naturally pointing you in the environment where you need to go, what you need to do. It just, I don't know. There's something about like, why am I doing this? Where am I going? Does this even matter? So another game I wish I liked more, because from a gameplay perspective, it's just, it plays incredibly well. But from a presentation perspective, from a sound design, from a graphic design standpoint, like I really find some parts of Echo Point Nova to be fairly off-putting in a way that I wasn't expecting, considering the core of what that game is awesome. This will probably also be the last time I talk about Echo Point Nova. I should also be noted that you can also play Echo Point Nova cooperatively. You can play it single player or multiplayer with friends, so you can just all hop in the same world together and run around and do stuff together. But like I said, there's a lot of the presentation around Echo Point Nova that leaves something to be desired, and I don't know if I'm the problem. I don't know if it's like me or what it is. Also, apparently that story mode is pretty short, unfortunately. And then finally, another game that I bought on the Steam sale that I've been playing is Sulaco. Sulaco is another first-person shooter. This game is in early access, and Sulaco takes a lot of influence from classic, first-person shooters, something like Doom or something like Fear, where you are in the spaceship, floating around, and your spaceship gets stormed by bad guys. And the AI in that game is really smart. It's very good about flanking you. Like, you're kind of always on in that game from the perspective of the enemies, right? They are, if you try to take cover and hide and stuff, like they will flank around both corners and you will be in trouble. So it's a game that's very much about like, hey, I'm going to run around and I'm going to shoot these people in this spaceship or whatever the environment is. And we're going to just run and gun like there's no tomorrow. It does not have the same speed or mobility as something like Echo Point Nova. In that sense, it plays more faithfully like a Doom game or a or a Fear in that regard. But I really, really like it. I think it's got some fun exploration elements. Oh, find the key to open the door. Like a tiny little bit of like that Resident Evil, like I got to open the door. How do I open the door? Stuff like that. But like really fun, like set piece moments and action. It's also got more of a retro style look, but like it's hard to describe. It's a very modern retro style look. So it's kind of got like a lower polygonal count Like, you know, it's not like photorealistic graphics, but it's like really nice lighting and like particle effects, which is a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. The game's supposed to be out for real next year in some way, shape, or form. I'm not too sure how long the story is supposed to be. I don't know. Like, they're adding more stuff to that game all the time. No voice acting, from what I've heard so far, and the story doesn't seem particularly, you know, noticeable, I guess I would say. Like, you wake up and you're in a spaceship and you got to figure out what's going on, and oh my god, everyone's trying to kill you, and it seems to be weirdly abandoned. But I really like the look of it. I like that modern kind of modern effects on a retro looking game. I think the gunplay is a lot of fun. I really like Sulaco. Like, that's what I would say is Sulaco right now seems to have a ton of potential. I'm very curious to see how the early access for that game pans out. But so far, Sulaco, I'll give the Sulaco a big old thumb up. I like what I'm playing so far of that game. It's a shame about Echo Point Nova. It's a shame about Brighter Shores and Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Now, just a reminder that Sunday. Is it Sunday? No. When's the early access? I got to look that up. When's early access? Yeah, so Sunday the 8th is when Indiana Jones and the Great Circle comes out. I am hoping that by this time next week, I will be able to talk about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I don't know just yet how much of that game we'll get a chance to play, considering that, you know, I work Monday, Tuesday, and the podcast comes out on the Wednesday. But hey, if I can play some Indiana Jones, you will be the first to know. But I got to get back to other games that I've been playing. I want to play some more Sulaco. I want to play some more Pal World. I might go back to Stalker 2. Apparently they did a lot of updates to Stalker 2 that have come out recently. Maybe I'll go back to Stalker 2. Like I said, maybe I'll do some more Pal World. I'm not too sure. While it's not a 2025 game, maybe I'll get back to Final Fantasy 16 at some point. I also really want to play Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip. That's another game that I bought. So there's a lot going on that I need to play. As always, I also got to really start seriously considering, you know, what is going to be for Game of the Year awards and nominations and all of that stuff. So hey, I got a lot of work ahead of me, and you know, playing video games, which isn't that bad, and maybe you'll have lots of video games to play as well. And that's going to do it for the podcast. I have been GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree. That is linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, regular old Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff in one convenient location. We'll see you all next week. Take it easy.